And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday Night Live, a very special Tuesday Night Live. And to kick us off, here's Peter J. How you going, Pete?
G'day, mate. Thanks very much for that, and welcome everybody, all the listeners, for another episode of Tuesday Night Live on the Adelaide Crowcast. Really happy to have you along tonight, and should be a really, really interesting episode. Of course, the guys went down to West Lakes last week, and were able to have a meeting with Ian Shuttleworth and Andrew Fagan. And guys, along with us tonight, we've got Nikki and Macca as well as Phoenix. How are you tonight?
Very good, thanks.
Very well.
And I will lead into you guys because obviously you were the three that went along and had a chat, so I wasn't able to get there. But from all accounts, very, very interesting. So fire away.
Well, Pete, I thought what we'd do first of all, we were very lucky to actually be given a few minutes with Andrew in a live recording. So I thought what we'd do first of all tonight is play that recording with Andrew, and then would lead into the actual questions, and Nikki, myself and Macca will talk through each question from go to woe. And then afterwards, and it may turn into a slightly extended cast, but afterwards we can throw Skype open. Our handle is AFL Crowcast on Skype. And if people want to call in and ask a question or have a discussion, they certainly can. And also, if people are listening and they want to chat, they can join us on, obviously, Spreaker.com/users/AFL Crowcast, or they can tweet us at AFL Crowcast. So plenty of interaction tonight. And without further ado, let's get into the interview.
Yes, I know the Muffin Man.
Do you know the Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man.
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man!
Yes, I know the Muffin Man.
Lucky enough this morning to be with Crow CEO Andrew Fagan and Media Manager Ian Shuttleworth, who's sitting in the corner. Andrew, thanks for joining us, mate.
Good to be here. Thanks for coming in.
Now, you've got some big shoes to fill because, as I might have mentioned to you before, our most popular interview ever was with David McKay, so if you don't hit those numbers, mate, this might be the last interview we ever do.
Well, I'll try and do my best, but D-Mac is a quality individual, so I'd be happy for him to retain the place at the top of the table.
Andrew, I just thought we'd, obviously we're asking some questions from people that have put in suggestions through Big Footy and Facebook and Twitter. So we've collated those and we'll just ask some broad questions based around those. The first one is just around the football department. And one of the key things that you wanted to make sure was in place when you first came on board was that we had best practice football department. How do you think we're tracking in that regard?
Yeah, look, we've made a lot of progress, and you're ultimately judged by your results, and the football program has evolved a lot over the last couple of years and has ultimately delivered improved results on the field, which is both in terms of wins and in terms of our place on the table, obviously with some ongoing room for improvement. I think that probably what is harder to see from those that are outside the club is the amount of change that's actually taken place within the whole high performance setup. We've probably had 20 staffing changes from coaches to head coaches to line coaches to development coaches, high performance directors, strength coaches, dietitians, consultants who work with us on everything from grappling to leadership to well-being to the ways in which we actually educate the boys, changes to our physios, doctors and the like. There's almost no area that's gone untouched. And then we've had all of those areas reviewed by industry experts out of the Australian Institute of Sport and other sort of leading high performance experts to almost apply pressure to it and rigour to it to ensure that we've made good decisions, and each time we've received a really strong endorsement from those external those external reviews. So we're really happy with the progress that's been made, and if anything now, it's about stability and keeping those people in place, or at least the core elements of them, or core elements of the structure in place, because it's working really well, and we're hoping that it's going to continue to improve solid results.
Well, the one I was interested in is about the social media, and because there's been an increase already we've noticed over the off-season, and is there anything you can kind of hint towards what we're going to get, something new that's coming up this year?
Oh, there might be a couple of new things. So, look, we have taken a really deliberate approach to expanding the ways in which we can engage with our fan base. The appetite continues to grow for content and understanding what's going on at the football club. And so social media is becoming obviously a really significant tool and platform for us, and it's been great to see those numbers grow, and importantly also the levels of engagement grow, not just the likes but the comments that come back, and we try as much as possible to answer those questions when we can. I've got to say, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I'm sort of sitting at that question I might have in my Twitter feed, I'm thinking, look, I want to tell you the answer, but I actually can't, because I'm also speaking directly to every media outlet in the country as well, so it's just a little bit difficult at times, so I apologise for that, but I certainly, where I feel as though I can without causing other problems for us, I do. So we've got I think a relatively open position on wanting to become or develop a media production capability in our own right. We obviously now produce our own TV show that will be entering its third season. We piloted some live shows last year, like live selection shows and the like. We'll do more of that. We'll increasingly look at ways to provide inner sanctum access into the club through some new technology, and we'll look at, without giving away too much, but I'm hoping that we'll unveil some content distribution that will take place over some different platforms or new platforms over the next few months that I reckon people will really engage with.
Do you ever want to just get hold of the Adelaide Footy Club Twitter account and bag a few trolls, or...?
I do, just for fun. Occasionally I will draft a reply to something, and then I'll screenshot it and I'll send it through to Shuts and just say, are you okay, I'll just set this out. And then my phone usually rings immediately with him saying, you didn't, did you? No, it's all good. Like, people are passionate and they engage. You like to hope that people, that they're respectful and they maybe think through the question. But I also know that, when it's not going well, we're in a job where we expect to get feedback and we expect to get it immediately. So we just got to cop that.
Andrew, it has sort of been attributed to you, I think probably incorrectly, that you were hoping for a goal of 200,000 members by 2025. Do you think that's realistic, or was that just sort of throwing a figure out at the time? And are we on schedule for our projected time frame to reach a goal of 100,000 members?
Yep, sure. So, look, I've spoken a bit about membership and how I view it, and I certainly take a different perspective to the traditional way in which membership has been counted. For me, the count is kind of irrelevant. It's actually about the level of engagement that you've got with your fan base. I don't think it was a stated goal that we'd have 200,000 members by 2025, but what I said is there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to. For me, it's about developing a connected community, and to do that, we've got to develop an engaged relationship with as many as possible of our 600,000 fans, and that means I need to know who they are, because if I know maybe what their name is and what they like, what sort of information they like to receive, then increasingly we can tailor communication that's important to them, and we can communicate generically less than we do at the moment, and that should mean that everyone has a happier and more engaged level or a relationship with us. So how we then as a club monetise that to drive sort of the commercial return that we want, well, that can be achieved in a number of ways, and for me it's not about trying to sell a $50 membership to every one of our fans. It's actually about developing a relationship with them that's important, because if they become engaged and sticky and passionate, and they devour the content that I know your fellow forum members do, then I can make money off the back of that, which can then go back into investing into the players and the programs that we run and the membership services we provide. So I reckon 100,000 in 3 years is quite realistic, and then I think it will grow exponentially after that.
Thank you very much.
Andrew, just the last one, because we know you're pressed for time. You must have been stoked by the inaugural women's round last weekend. How has it impacted the club to have the women's team, and do you see that as a spike in success, or do you see that as something that can be sustainable?
Yeah, we're obviously super excited, as we have been over the last 12 months, but culminated in that opening round. It was good to get that one away, and obviously get the win as well. As we stated from the outset, look, we jumped into it quickly when the AFL were first mooting the competition. We wanted to be South Australia's representative. We wanted to change the AFL's perspective on having a team from South Australia in the competition in the inaugural year, which they weren't looking to do initially. We wanted to take on the responsibility of developing a pathway or providing a pathway for talented young girls to play the game that we all love. And, you know, over 12 months we did all the things necessary to assemble a team and coaching squad and all the rest of it. And look, we're really happy with how it started. The support was extraordinary. The TV numbers were sort of off the charts. The attendance was, I think, exceeded expectations. And as I said, I think somewhere publicly last week, maybe we just had exceeded expectations because it was too low. Maybe we just didn't think it was going to be as popular as it was. But I think now it's, we'll see where it settles, as sort of the competition gets into more of a weekly flow over the next couple of months. And what I'm really confident about is wherever it lands, that's a baseline for year one. We've had 150 years of AFL. Wherever it lands in its first year, it will grow. The quality of the football will improve. The member experience and fan engagement within it will improve as people actually understand the personalities that are involved in the team and get to know them. Obviously investment will grow into the team. The pathways that provide talent will continue to grow. Already we've seen significant increases in the number of women playing footy and number of girls taking up the game. So it's here to stay, and it's going to be an important part of how we operate as a footy club.
Andrew, look, we've appreciated at the Crowcast the club's engagement with us, with player interviews, and now yourself making some time available for us. So thanks very much for your time, and good luck for the year.
No worries, appreciate it. Look, appreciate the support, the following, the passionate debate, and we do jump on and take a look and from time to time, and look, what's clear is that passion sits at the forefront of people's comments, whether they're good, bad or indifferent. And I look forward to you coming back next year and maybe allowing me to eat one of the muffins this time and not pigging out like you guys have all done today.
Just for the record, there's still 5 on the plate and I haven't had one. Thanks, Andrew.
Good on you guys.
Cheers. And absolutely correct. Fagan was the one who ate the majority of the muffins, I believe. Isn't that right, guys?
Room, and we go, oh, there's some nice muffins and everything, and he just grabbed one straight away and he's into eating it. So he's a liar, pants on fire about the muffin.
He devoured it. Beautifully done, Phoenix. That was a very nice interview. Obviously, that was just a fairly short portion of what went on down there, and you obviously spent a couple of hours down there. And maybe could talk us through some of the questions and answers that filtered through from the club. Yeah,
so, what we did, we took, for those listeners that aren't part of the Big Footy forums, obviously the Crowcast has its roots and direct links to Big Footy, and we did put questions to the board because certainly this meeting is very much about engagement between the club and the Big Footy board, as well as our broader listener base. So as well as putting out questions on Twitter and Facebook, we also went to the Big Footy boards. Now, a lot of the questions that were on the forum thread were either duplicated or overlapped, or were things asked a different way, meaning the same thing. So we went and collated all the basically all the questions into something that was a little bit more concise. We didn't include questions that were directly related to football itself, selection, trading, that sort of thing, because they're just not going to cover that sort of stuff. And whilst a couple of things were spoken about, that's certainly not something that the club can talk about publicly, as everyone would obviously understand. So the 4 categories really, that we went into was the football department, the football club itself, list management. We were able to ask a few questions sort of around there, and then a couple of residual questions as well. So Nikki and Macca, I guess we're just going to go through these questions from go to woe, and we can put forward what was said. Sound like a deal?
Sounds like a good plan.
Yep.
Nikki can lead the way with the next one.
Well, there was the first one which we did ask at Fages. So just to let people know, the interview that we recorded that you just listened to there, that happened at the end of the discussion. So we kind of picked up on what we thought was
threads.
kind of the main threads and which ones that Fagan was actually really open about. So the football department one was really interesting. So he mentioned about the changes. There's about 20 people going through. He actually questioned us and asked, how many changes have there been since he's taken over? And I think we thought around 10, maybe 8, 9, 10. And he's like, no, there's 20. Every single one of those was gone out externally. They had an external panel that selected them. So he was quite open regarding that. And then he let us know about, as he mentioned there, bringing in external reviews. And the impression I got, and I think it'd be interesting to see if you two got that, was that this is going to be something that's ongoing for him, that he's going to continually bring in and is always going to continually review it.
Well, that seemed to be a common theme that they had as part of their ongoing rigour, as he put it, this continual review process. And I think there were 3 external reviewers of professional organisations that were specialising in the various fields that were being reviewed, that went through various aspects of the football program, and gave frank and honest feedback.
Yeah, well, if you're going to conduct best practice, you'll only know that if you review it from outside rather than from within. It's pretty easy to pat yourselves on the back, but when outside people make their judgments, they're actually they're objective rather than subjective.
Just as an outside observer, because I said I wasn't at the meeting, did they talk about whether there was an external review done on the fact that in the first quarter and a half against the Sydney Swans that we had 22 players that could not get hold of the football?
Well, as we said, Peter, there was no specific football-related questions asked because they weren't going to be answered. You're as bad as some of the other people I could. You're as bad as the Muffin Man on the boards.
I was just curious because 12 months ago we had this relatively similar situation of a semi-final against Hawthorn, where for the first quarter and a half we had 22 players who could not get hold of the football.
Yeah.
It just seems funny that it happened 2 years running. So I was just wondering if there'd been some external attention paid to that.
Look, I'll be frank, Pete. It's not a silly statement, and I'll be frank and say that Andrew, in the manner in which he described the football department, its ongoing, resourcing and their ongoing review and assessment, there wasn't any mention of, premiership points at the end of it as a measure. And whilst he did mention that the improvement in the football department had resulted in a rise up the ladder and an increased number of wins, which you can't deny because that's certainly been the case over the past 2 or 3 years. I must admit, I would have liked a more football-related outcome as part of that review assessment, because after all, that's what we're here to do.
Fair call, and I was just needling a bit there, but I'm just curious. That's all, and because it is, in all seriousness, it is easy to talk up. And he did talk up the whole, best practice football department, and it's easy to say, look, the external reviews, blah blah. But at the end of the day, Fages would know this. This is not any secret to him. It's a results-driven industry, and so anyway, we look forward to this year, hopefully improving a bit. Admittedly, that's what we said in 2015 as well. But anyway, sorry, go on, guys, play on. Other questions?
Well,
that's fine.
That actually leads into the next question that was asked, which is that it was pointed out on the board, and this is something I didn't know, and I found it was quite interesting, which is that over the past 10 years, nearly every club that has won a grand final has received some sort of assistant concession or supplement. And so from that, it was like, considering the evidence suggests the team requires AFL assistance to win the flag, and Adelaide has received no such assistance, what strategy do we have in place for competing with teams that have an advantage? Now, that's something that Fag wasn't aware of either, but he just pretty much came out and said, well, no, we're not going to tank. We're not going to lose in all of those draft picks. And he was very strong on that. It's very much not within his philosophy, and his belief towards that, he think, is also backed up, but that it would not be acceptable for the fan base for that to occur either.
Yeah, he was very strong on the fact that we'd stand on our own 2 feet, that we weren't going to, cry and whinge about it to AFL House. We weren't going to strategically drop down the ladder to gain, higher draft picks, etc., etc. That the Adelaide Football Club was very much a performance-driven club, and we would strive every season to finish as high as we possibly could. There you go.
Yep. And the next question, then, when we asked him, it's really a series of questions within a question, and it's basically, has there been any change in the club's attitude towards having a club room, venue, or whatever, somewhere else for members? And has the club got any plans for a venue in the future? And what are the club's long-term plans regarding their non-football related revenue? His answer was pretty simple about that. He said that at the moment they have the advantage of having virtually a rent-free situation, and they've got that for the balance of 20 years. And he said, I don't have a money tree, and we don't have great big reserves like Hawthorn have, and it's really not much. He said we did have one crack at it, and we did it on the university grounds, which would have been absolutely ideal, but that was again.
No, the crack at it was actually when they were using the indoor cricket centre there, Mako. Remember that went for a year or two, and then it just kind of fell over. It wasn't workable.
Yep, and then what he basically said is that there are no current plans, and I don't think he would have told us even if they did have a long-term one. But
I don't know.
Anyhow, we can tell our members anyhow that there won't be any change in the near future, and by the near future, I'm talking probably 5 to 10 years. It looks like West Lakes is where we're staying, and they'll probably put some money away and look around, and maybe towards the end of that term, of the 20-year term, or maybe somewhere between the 10 and 20-year mark, they may then try and find a situation where they can build alternative headquarters. But at the moment, definitely no plans in the offing at all.
Yeah, and in terms of an actual venue in town or anywhere else, as Andrew rightly pointed out, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't, in terms of if they bought a pub or did something like that, because irrespective of the location, it's going to disenfranchise a certain section of the membership. So, and with so many competing venues in the city after a game, It just isn't deemed to be worthwhile. So that's, for better or worse, that's where the club sits on it, and it certainly didn't seem to be any hurry to get out of Westlakes, did there, Nick?
No, not at all. The other question, which was sort of this one then followed on, was about the board elections. And I'm kind of with the rest of the board in how we think about it, that the fact that there was a lack of nominations from rank and file members, that there's possibly saying that, we're going up against past players, we don't have a hope in hell. And so Fagan's response to that, and I think Schutz was backing him up on it, was that no, they weren't disappointed. They actually, the fact that there were no nominations is they think that the members are okay with who we have on there. Once again, he did actually explain that that was an external appointment. It's not kind of done internally when they're actually looked at for the nominations, etc. And yeah, they're happy with the process at the moment.
Yeah, they very very definitely thought that the lack of nominations was essentially an indication from the membership that essentially all is right with the world. It's an open election process, and if there's a group of members that are disenfranchised or feel that the club needs to have different representation, then the mechanism is there. So, whether you agree or disagree with that, that's the club's attitude towards it, and you can't really fault it. I mean, the mechanism is there. No. So, they don't have to bend over backwards to, encourage anyone to apply or to nominate. The mechanism's there if someone's motivated to do so. So these are all this series of questions are all more football club related, and he did touch on in the interview the social media aspect. Now he and Ian were quite effusive about the plans on the social media front and in general, their media. And the interesting thing is, the fact that they're going to have a studio in-house, they're producing their own TV show, they're producing their own social media. I've already noticed an upswing in the social media interaction from the club. I mean, we had Tex's little video the other day.
Live.
Yeah, Facebook Live. Facebook Live is going to become a big medium for the club. And Ian did hint that they were planning a few surprises, both in terms of the content and also the delivery. So the club and Ian and Andrew in particular are extremely conscious of reaching as many people as possible outside of their season ticket holders, and engaging in as many ways and on as many platforms as possible. And I thought Andrew was actually very upfront and frank about the fact that he needs to make people sticky to the club, because that brings in money to the club, and he's not ashamed to say that, because ultimately money coming into the club gets spent on the footy department and on the club and making us more competitive and hopefully closer to a premiership.
And because we talked when we mentioned it, how everything like the video clips are branded as AFC Media, and I did ask, is this an actual a separate company? They said no, it's not a separate company, but it is part of the football club. It's treated as a company. So for I think the documentary on our women's team, which we actually did the whole thing for. Schutz was the executive producer, etc. And they did actually mention that this is a revenue stream for the clubs. They have actually produced media for other sporting associations and other companies. That they're actually that's a really nice revenue stream that the club is actually doing. And the one thing we didn't touch on, we've just glossed over because it was mentioned, was about the $200,000 200,000 members kind of the aim for it. I found it was really interesting in our discussion of this, and he didn't mention it in the recorded interview, was that he talked about how he thinks that the membership count is archaic. He's talked with Gil about it, and that I think pretty much he's getting Gil on side that this is an archaic measurement.
Yeah,
that the club itself is doing a lot of work on ways to actually count other members who don't have to pay, but they are members of the club, and tying that in through the social media. And he did say that we'll see a change coming. He didn't kind of put a timeline on it, but the membership counts won't really be a thing.
Well, I can understand where it's coming from on the membership counts because, you take Port Adelaide, for example, they include dogs and cats and clotheslines or whatever they do. They just about count everything in there. And I think no two clubs are actually counting the same way. A lot of clubs, they count the five. I think all the clubs count the 5 game or 3 game, whatever it is, membership as if it's a full membership. And of course, it's not in terms of revenue. And interesting, he said that revenue would be one way of doing it, but as Nicky said, there are other factors beside that as well. So really, it's a very difficult thing when you're trying to measure yourself against another club because you're probably not adding it up the same way.
Well, not only that, it's just an arbitrary figure anyway, and I think it was discussed at some point that it's almost it's a throwback to an earlier age, and obviously in Melbourne with higher competition for membership, it's an easy number to throw up there, isn't it? It's an easy measure to put up there, but the bottom line is that the club wants to touch every supporter that they possibly can. And tying that in with the social media question, they see that as a really good way to do it. What did he say? Something he said basically he wants people to be able to access the club on their preferred platform, so that they actually get less hits from the club, but the hits that they do get are on the way they like to receive them.
Yeah, so he was talking about at the moment when they send an email out, it just goes to everybody. But if they're sending out information on the women's team, well, maybe you don't want to receive information on the women's team. But
exactly.
The next person does. And the first person, okay, they only want to receive information on the SNFL team. But the second person wants the women's team and the SNFL team. So it's a way of targeting, I want information on this, this, and this. And so they're obviously looking at that, because a lot of times you're getting some of the emails in, you're being inundated. So he's very mindful of, whilst they're trying to do a reach as much as possible, they also don't want people to have fatigue of getting too much, because if you get too much, you just go, I'm just going to delete that as soon as it comes in.
Yep. Now, the next question was actually asked by one of our Facebook people, and it was basically regarding the roof walk at Adelaide Oval, and the question was basically that the person went on a roof walk the other day, and he was told that you can do the tour during the power game, which includes watching a quarter from the seats on the roof of the Riverbank stand. However, you couldn't do it with Crows games. Now, we put that to Andrew, and that roof walk with the viewing will actually be available this year. And the reason why it wasn't available last year is essentially because the commercial arrangement that was put to the club was just not appropriate. And whilst the Power were quite happy to accept it, Adelaide didn't feel as if it was a good deal. They've been able to broker a deal this year that they feel is more acceptable, and so they'll be enabling people to do that roof walk during Crows games. And spending I assume similarly spending a quarter sitting on the seats up there at the top of the Riverbank Stadium. So that's that.
Beautiful, nice work. Can I just perhaps switch the discussion a little bit back to the footy department? And there was a couple of questions that came my way on Twitter account, and it related to the issue of player retention, acquisition, etc. And I think that it was right at the point that the Mitch McGovern rumours were at their hottest, and obviously people concerned that once again we lose players to interstate. Was there any discussion about the view the club has on player retention, player acquisition, and I know that they won't answer specific questions. They're obviously not going to answer a question on McGovern, other than that, negotiations are ongoing. But was there any general discussion on the football department in that respect?
Only in the sense of the length of contract was one of the discussions, and the fact that we've started giving 5-year contracts when we would never do that before, and we've given longer contracts to people who hit age 30, and when we never did that before, where they usually got 1 year. And the answer from Andrew on that was basically that what we're doing is basically tailored to the player, and what you would read behind the lines of what he was saying is the fact is that what pressures they've got to retain the player from other clubs. And he said also on top of that, you do have some players who would like a longer contract so that they don't have to be bothered about negotiation. They know they've got the money coming in and it's going to be there all the time. They don't have to bother renegotiating, and it probably gives them security to do things as well. So he really didn't see it as a major thing. It was more like adjusting to the times, I think.
Well, and not only that, Macca, and without being too specific, Andrew made the comment that in terms of attracting big name players have got to want to come here, and it's what we as supporters always suspect. A player's got to want to come here first and foremost. We don't have a bottomless salary cap. And so before we can actually attract a player, they've got to want to come here. And then even if they do want to come here, they've got to be the right fit. And if they're not the right fit, then it's not really worth pursuing them to any great extent. So, I think that what Macca said was pretty much what Andrew said, that our contract structure is probably looser than it used to be under the Neil Craig, Stephen Trigg regime, where we were very, tight on players getting one year contracts after the age of 30 and all the rest of it. And it's reflective of free agency and all the rest of it, that, longer term contracts are more common, and it really is about accommodating the player as much as possible.
And that's not just a change by our club, it's something that was kind of noted that it's happening over the whole AFL, that it's a lot more noticeable for longer term contracts and stability to be occurring. And part of the things that he did raise was that for a lot of those bigger name, those kind of players that you kind of look at and you think, they've got families to think of as well. Is their family ready to up and move? So it's a whole host of things as to why, and that they do. He did say that they do a lot of planning, and it's often years ahead that they've been looking and keeping an eye on people. So it's something I think the club is, the way I took it is, the club is very aware of it, but the club is also honest about where we sit, because we're not based in Melbourne.
Yeah, that
which
point
puts
was
us
made.
behind the 8 ball.
That point was made, Nicky, about they're not being based in Melbourne. That's a lot easier for the clubs in Melbourne because of the fact that it's the big time where everything seems to happen, and they've got media opportunities, etc. And whereas not to everybody, but to some players coming to South Australia is going to a backwater. And
they didn't say that.
He didn't say that.
No,
be careful, Macca. You've got to attribute comments to yourself if you're going to say stuff like that. The club didn't say anything like that.
No, he did not.
No, he did say that it can be difficult attracting
let's
to
not
South Australia.
let's not paraphrase out of context, because we are representing what the club was saying, Macca.
What he actually said, Macca, was that, and as I alluded to about the families, was that you've got a player who, if he comes out of contract, he's got so many other clubs in Melbourne that he can pick on, or he can move interstate. And if he's got a family, he looks at it, okay, you've got a partner, they've got a job, are they able to move? Do you want to take their kids out of school? and can he just all of a sudden look around and go, well, there's 3 other clubs within this one place. I don't have to move, and my kids don't have to move, or that kind of scenario. They're going to stay in Melbourne because there is more teams. It's just logical.
Apologies to Andrew there for adding my own thoughts in there. Sorry.
Let's be very clear about when we're making our own comments, Macca, and when we're representing the club's comments. Could you? I could just imagine the meltdown on the board. Fake said the essays are backwater. That's almost up there with the pissant town comment from bloody that Adelaide United coach a few years, Aurelio Vidmar.
Yeah.
Andrew Fagan did not say that Adelaide was a backwater. The end.
No, it's just Macca, who willingly lives here.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus Christ.
Okay, moving on to the next one, which was, there was an ask of, did we have a say where pre-season games are played? And it was specifically, I think, to do with somebody who actually lives up around North Queensland. So
yeah, that was off Facebook as well.
There was a chance. And Fagan said, not really. They do have a little bit of a say when it's going out to the community, so the country games, etc., in that they can make a representation to the AFL to say, hey, look, we really want to engage more with this particular area because we haven't. And they do have a little bit of a say regarding the SANFL grounds, a bit in a way, but most of it is through the SANFL that is done. And so he said any games to be played up north in Queensland, that's all on the back of the QAFL, who actually has the discussions with the AFL about that. Now, do you want to ask the next question, Phoenix, and I can answer it exactly how Fags did?
Get stuff, Nikki.
Look, now, no, this is for Elite Crow's benefit on the big footy boards. So, EC, I'm sure you're not listening, but just for your benefit anyway, we asked the question specifically, when are we getting a new logo? And the answer is?
Never. Which then got changed to not at the moment. Not on our radar.
It's not on the, not in the plans.
It's not in the plans. It was just, not going to happen.
And
sorry.
Despite we're having a bit of fun at it because this particular big footy poster asks this question quite regularly. But Andrew did make the point.
I know it has been raised, I think, in the last 2 meetings as well.
Yeah.
So we raise it every year.
Andrew did make the point that rebranding is not a cheap exercise. We've obviously invested in our branding and our logos and all that sort of stuff. And to change those around is not an easy or cheap exercise. So it's not something you do lightly. And as it stands at the moment, they certainly don't have any plans, as Nikki said, to change the Raptor. I mean the Adelaide Crows logo.
I did clarify that it is the AFL that owns those logos, and he said, yeah, it is. So you do have to ask permission from them. But he said the AFL's not. They're going to take a call. They're not going to say no regarding that. We then asked the question about, are we going to change the look of the Clash Guernsey? And he said, no, not for this year, because they're actually on a 2-year rotation. So we have them we keep them for 2 years. So we had, last year was the first year, so we'll get it again this year. But then after that, there will be a change in it. What was the next one, Macca? This was really interesting.
It was because go on.
Yeah, this is something that's quite close to my heart, because when our club song gets played, I refuse to sing the line that we are known as the Adelaide Crows, because it used to be, we are the mighty Adelaide Crows. So we asked, when was it removed from the club song, from that opening stanza? And what I found really fascinating was Fags was like, I didn't know it was. So he went and asked, smart, he asked Robin, I think he asked a few other people who've been around the club for a very long period of time, when was it changed? And they're like, it was. And they kind of didn't know. And he did point out that they then went and looked at it and discovered that the word mighty is used twice towards the end as well. So what they think might have happened was when it was re-recorded, they looked at it and went, well, you can't say mighty 3 times. And so they kind of took it out, the opening bit. And I said, well, we're kind of passionate about this. We don't like it and we want it back, please. Because no one as the Adelaide Crows is a bit kind of, yeah. But he did say that they were going to look into it further.
Yep, and it's an example, I guess, where, you know, someone at a club like the Adelaide Footy Club, that'd be the last thing they'd be thinking of. And yet, as supporters, we sing the song a certain way. And I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I sing the song or listen to it being sung and they say we're known as the Adelaide Crows, it really makes my bloody blood boil.
It grates me too, because, you know, we're known as the Adelaide Crows. It almost implies you are somebody else, but we're known as that.
just the tone of it brings the song to a standstill, because if you think about how you sing it, known kind of brings you on a downtone, and then crows. So you're starting the downhill run well before you get to the last. It just stinks.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
Yeah, it's almost like our Girt by Sea moment in our club song.
To be fair, I kind of like that because it's just the word girt. The only thing about that song I like is because it's the only song I ever know that has the word girt in it. It's annoying as all hell.
I love lighting a fire under you, Nikki. I really love lighting a fire under you.
Can I just follow up just another question that went from a Twitter person, and that just related to communications generally. There was just some questioning about how communications came out, particularly during the trade period. Now, once again, I know that there wouldn't be any specific questions on specific deals or how things were going, but there was just a point raised on how the club communicated during trade period. And I'm not sure whether anything specific was discussed about that, but if there was any general discussion just in relation to communications generally, that might be useful.
I think the main point about that is that it's just very difficult because negotiations are behind closed doors. They're, you know, often multifaceted. They change very quickly. And
sorry, I'll just pull you up. And sorry, let me just be clearer. Specifically, the question related to the fact that, we had Justin.
Oh, where'd you go, Pete?
He's disappeared on it.
Done the old disappearing trick again.
Where did he went into bloody... Come back, Pete.
That was really a more specific tone to the question.
Pete, I don't know what you clicked there, but you went out of the channel, so we didn't hear any of that. So start again.
Sorry. Have you got me now?
Yep.
Sorry, it just related specifically to the communication. We have Reedy doing his job on the trade table. That's fine, but should he then be, I guess, dual purpose and giving some of the media stuff he did was a little bit ordinary. I think we can all remember back to that. And so I'm just relating. That was a question that I put forward on behalf of a Twitter follower.
Yeah, and to be fair, it wasn't something that we could discuss openly with Andrew and regarding trades specifically. So whilst I mean, I can give my personal view, but that doesn't mean anything here. We can't give you anything on that particular question from the club because it's not something they can discuss publicly. Aside from to say... Well,
in a general communication sense, I mean, was there any discussion just in relation to communications, I guess, and how they manage that?
Well, it's I don't really understand the question.
Well, I'm trying to. I guess I'm trying. I mean,
what you're trying to say is Reedy stuffed up.
Reedy did a bad job. Twitter follower, and I put it forward on that Twitter follower's behalf. So I'm just following it up. If the question just didn't get asked, or if there was no reference to communications generally, then so be it.
Well, there was reference to communications in terms of the specifics, which I'm sure being referred to as Justin Reid. Then it's not something we can discuss. basically. Hello?
But, yeah, fair enough. Play on.
Yeah, it's not something we can discuss.
Yeah, we should move on, I think. And
the next one was really interesting, wasn't it, Macca?
Talking about the numbers, Nikki?
Yeah, and the names on training Guernseys. So when they have the open training sessions.
It sounds like a great idea when you first hear it, but as they said, there's probably only 2 or 3 open training days, and then on top of that they're probably being watched by all the opposition spies from all the other clubs, and they often put different numbers on them rather than their playing number to confuse them. That
was my comment, not Fages' comment, Macca. But what he did say is they often change Guernseys quite regularly, different colours, all the rest of it. For match simulation or whatever. So, logistically, it'd be a nightmare to have them all have a pile of 10 Guernseys with their name on it, sitting on the ground, waiting for them to change over. It's just not workable. And whilst they acknowledge the idea, logistically, it's just not workable.
No, not on a practical basis.
He did say that they would look into it a little bit further though, because they did think it was quite a good idea.
Yep. Now, there was a couple more list management questions. One was the motivation behind...
there's the whole thing about the Adelaide Crows.
Oh, okay.
You missed that one?
Yeah, well, we're kind of chopping around a bit now. Yeah, so can we ask the AFL and its partners to stop referring to us as Adelaide Crows? Is this something the club has requested, or is that just the media? Nikki, you're probably best placed to answer this one.
Yeah, he kind of just said that, it is mostly the media, but the club also does refer to itself as the Adelaide Crows sometimes. I think he said there were 3 different ways that they refer to themselves, and depending on the market or what they're trying to say as to how they refer to themselves as. So they're okay with it. He then kind of went through, they do that with some other teams, and once he started listing them, and then we kind of went, they're none of the Victorian teams. It seems to be something that's quite conscious, is that you always have the Fremantle Dockers, you always have the West Coast Eagles, you have the Brisbane Lions, you have the Sydney Swans, you have the Gold Coast Suns, you have GWS Giants, you've got Port Adelaide Power, you've got us as the Adelaide Crows.
No.
The only Victorian one, which I think is the Western Bulldogs. Yeah,
but interestingly, I recall a couple of years ago Port Adelaide making a specific request to no longer be referred to as Port Adelaide Power or Port Power, and they would be the exception to the rule. Andrew didn't seem to think it was an issue. They have it's part of their branding package, I guess you'd say. As you pointed out, we're known as the Adelaide Crows, the Adelaide Football Club, etc., etc. So they didn't see it as detrimental or something that really needed to be addressed with basically, we didn't feel strongly about it like Port Adelaide might have.
Yeah.
Right, so a couple left, and apologies if we're not trying to whiz through these, but there's just been so many, and we're conscious of people's time, so just a couple to go. The motivation behind going short on the list this year. Now, you guys can chip in here, but basically what we were told is that it's really, our list position really isn't much different or any different to last season. And they are very conscious and planning for the merging of the main and secondary lists. So, the feeling is that by the end of this season or whenever that merging happens, it's not going to be an issue anyway. So they're basically planning as if that's already the case.
Yep, and they said that we weren't alone. We weren't the only club that's doing that, and it was actually, if you look at the list of other clubs, it's pretty common, and for that very reason that you just said then, Phoenix.
Yeah, and interestingly, a little segue on that, and this is nothing to do with the club, this is just me thinking out loud. It kind of makes the whole Benjamin situation a little bit more tenable, because when if they're assessing their list as a one list situation, then taking Ben in the rookie draft was essentially an exercise in getting him as cheaply as possible, which you can't bag the club about.
obviously that was the case. I mean, they would have been crazy not to have done it the way they did it. And I commend the club that they had the smarts to do it that way.
Yeah, and let's not get bogged down in that discussion, but it is, when you consider that they're looking at it as a one-list situation, or certainly planning for a one-list situation, then it's rather more palatable, even from a philosophical point of view, favourite son, etc., etc. Anyway, let's move on from that.
We did reference about the CBA.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I remember, we did. How's the club? Are they getting notified, etc., up with it? And Fagan just kind of said, well, we're not one of the parties. We're kind of outside of it. When it happens, it happens. And we did actually ask that, what does the clubs feel about the players that push for the percentage based? And do you want to answer that one, Phoenix?
Yeah, well, he essentially, without being too specific, he was a little concerned about that. I don't think it was anything against the player. I think philosophically he felt that, or his concern was mainly that money was going to be redirected away from grassroots footy and foundation stuff. So growing the game was very much part of his concern. And I guess by association then his concern was that if the players get a percentage, then that might draw funds away from the foundations of the game. And he also raised the obvious question that everyone's been talking about is, what happens if revenue dips? Are the players going to be satisfied, as they say they will, with a drop in salary commensurate with that percentage? So, that was basically his position. But as you rightly pointed out, Nikki, the club essentially felt they're not a party to the current negotiations, and it was steady as she goes in terms of contract negotiations and all that sort of stuff.
Then we went and then onto the Jackson Edward situation, and it was suggested by one of the big footy people, why don't we apply for permission for him to play with our SANFL side, like the father-son prospects do in the VFL? And the answer is simply we can't, because the SANFL won't allow it. So it's something I would love to see, but and I thought it was a terrific suggestion, but it just can't be.
Yeah, well, the Bays wouldn't think it's a terrific suggestion.
No.
And so you've got to, look, it's like any other player coming up through the system. He's currently at SANFL level, and you can't. I don't certainly judge the SANFL for holding Jackson to his SANFL ties. I think it would devalue the SANFL even further if that sort of a player transfer was allowed. Given the fact that there's
already bad blood.
Well, there's already bad blood, but Jackson Edwards isn't our player until we pick him. That's my personal opinion. Jackson's not our player until we pick him. So yes, he's a potential father-son. Yes, he's coming trading with us and all the rest of it. But he's a Glenelg football player at the moment, and I'm sure Jackson would be comfortable with that. And I don't have any problems with the SANFL enforcing that either. Couple left now. These are just general ones to finish up. I guess the perception amongst the supporters was that we actually asked to get the West Coast time slot changed last year, and the fact that it got slotted in on a Friday night was potentially detrimental. It was never going to be on a Monday night. It was mooted by the AFL that there might be a game on the Monday night and that it might be our game. But Channel 7 had some other commitments that meant that there was never going to be a game on Monday night. We certainly made a representation of the AFL, if I remember rightly, Nick, that we didn't want one on the Monday night, but it was never going to be the case anyway.
Yeah.
So does that put paid to the kind of conspiracy theory that we were punished by having a game on the Friday night?
Yep, yeah. No conspiracy there. That was basically just shit programming by the AFL, and nothing to do with anything to do with the Monday night. And the last one, appropriately, I guess, it's a showdown question. Is there any chance that we will see a showdown SANFL curtain raiser to the AFL showdown? Unfortunately, the simple answer to that is no. and it had to do again with the SANFL competition.
Yeah, because we don't effectively have a home game, so it's not one that we can do.
Yeah. One thing that very big thank you to both Shuts and Andrew Fagan. We were promised an hour and they gave us 2 hours, and Shuts is a terrific bloke, and Andrew Fagan is one of the most impressive men I've ever had the pleasure of having a conversation with. He really impresses us knowing what he's talking about.
Yeah, and understand that whilst we had the 2 hours, time really did fly, and it was a very flowing conversation. It certainly, there was no strict agenda, and time did fly, and unfortunately it got cut a little bit short towards the end because Andrew had another commitment. But we certainly tried to get all the questions in that were asked on Big Footy that we could either ask or that we knew would get answered. And we hope that people are satisfied with what we've done.
All right. Well, that sounds.
Every time Pete talks, he jumps to another channel and nobody can hear him.
Pete, stop jumping to another channel. Yeah, you keep going to another channel.
I don't know how I do that, but
you're touching your screen.
Explain it to me afterwards.
You're touching the screen all the time.
So anyway, it's just over an hour. So thanks very much, guys. It was a really interesting hour of conversation, and it was certainly fantastic of the club to allow you guys to go down there, and also to grab a live interview as well.
So what's your take?
A terrific morning.
What's your take on all that, Pete? I mean, you're the devil's advocate, and I must say, and without taking over your hosting responsibilities, if anyone does have any follow-up questions or they want to have some discussions, we are open to Skype calls at the moment. So if anyone is brave enough to call in on Skype, it's AFL Crowcast on Skype. Give us a buzz, and if we like you, we'll put you on. But Pete, as the unbiased observer, what did you think about all of that?
Oh, look, I thought it was a good interview. I know I started off a little bit facetious about the external reviews because to me that's just a little bit of I don't. No disrespect meant, but as a supporter, I don't really rate that response. It's a results-driven industry, and we all know how long it's been since we have won a flag, how long it's been since we've even been in a grand final. We are a very, very, if your measure of success is grand finals, we are a very, very success-starved club, and I think that if you went through all of the clubs that have been in grand finals since our last appearance, you would be getting down to the expansion teams, and that's probably about it. You might be able to chuck one at me, and that would be all. So, we are a success-starved club, and that's my concern is not whether there's Ponzi external reviews on football programs and things like that. So that for me is a bit wishy-washy. Other than that, a lot of great stuff, a lot of interesting, good questions, and I think some good positive responses too. So it's obviously a really great exercise, for all of the people that listen and post on social media and very different forums and different platforms. It's a really, really good exercise, and I can see why they do it. I hope they like to be able to reach their supporters, and I. As someone that sat there and listened, I thank you three guys for taking the time to go down there and actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, just on your comment, I'm with you to a degree. Ongoing review processes can be very self-fulfilling, and whilst even the external ones, once close relationships are built with clubs or any organisation, it could take the edge off external reviews. But I would ask the question that, if not that, then what? You know what I mean? They've got to do something. They've got to, at least they're not being insular enough to, or arrogant enough to just say, well, we're going to do it this way and we're not going to, not going to open ourselves to scrutiny. So at least they do have a review process. The other thing that I would mention that wasn't, sorry, go on, Pete, you can respond to that.
No, I was going to say, look, that's fine, have a review process, but that's not the marker. and it just sounded to me like that was being put forward as the marker, and it's not.
But then you can open yourself up to situations like Essendon.
That's a very, very, very long bow.
Yeah, but certainly it's the opposite end of the spectrum. But that's the path you're going down if you don't actually, open yourself up to external analysis and review. I mean,
I've got no problem that they do it. I mean, it's fine. Have a review. Have people come in and assess. But all I'm saying is that's not an answer to supporters. It's not an answer. It's not enough of an answer. Do it by all means.
But Pete, it was only part of the answer. He was saying that this is one of the things they do towards trying to get the best practice. It wasn't a be all and end all. But the review said we're good, so that's it. Fagan definitely. When he Pete, can you please let me finish? He most definitely didn't say, as you are claiming it and the way that you've taken it. So I apologise if we didn't explain it well enough. That this is what they did, and that's all well and good because other people have said we're good. He was very strong on this is one of the methods that we do to try and engage it. They also do a lot of internal stuff. They're always continually looking at what they're doing. He's most definitely, the impression I got, is not satisfied that they've made it to best practice. They've got a standard that is acceptable, that he's very accepting of at the moment, but they are going to push further.
That's fine. But Fages, your wording after that was that you're a little bit disappointed that there seemed to be no success in the measure.
That was my words. Yep, and I don't back away from that.
Well, that's all I'm saying as well.
Yeah, no, and I'm not being critical.
Because at the end of the day, that's the measure.
Yep, and I agree. But to me, it's still not a bad thing to conduct those reviews. And I think if here's another example: the Kurt Tippett situation. If we had an internal review process, would the Kurt Tippett situation had occurred? If we had an external review process,
I think though that's a governance issue, and
but that's all about review, though. I mean, if you've got,
and if there's no governance, well then there's no organisation. I mean, you assume governance. What we're talking about is the new CEO goes in there and says, well, we're going to have the best football program in the country. And at the moment, he's been there 2 years. Well, that's not adding up, and that doesn't relate to governance. To me, that's a separate issue.
But it is all around policy and procedure. I mean, if you're going to run any sort of department, whether it be a white collar industry or a sporting department or whatever, you've got to have rigour around your policy and procedure, and as well as your appointments, your recruitment strategy, your position descriptions, your expectations and KPIs, all those sorts of things. It all sounds like a big toss, but they're all the things that contribute towards success. And my complaint was that on top of all those things, there wasn't the overarching KPI of winning a flag.
Yeah, well, no disagreement from me on that point.
Yeah.
But other than that, look, it was a very, very insightful and informative program this evening as a person that was listening. So I think that you covered some very interesting topics, and there were some good answers in there from the club, no doubt.
Yeah, look, I think it was good. There was a couple of elements that I was a little bit disappointed about in terms of... I hope Andrew is a very savvy individual, and Andrew has, I think, built some very, as I mentioned before, built a lot of rigour into our systems. I just hope, my overriding hope is that we don't lose sight of what we're there for, and that's to win a bloody flag. That's what I hope.
Yeah, I think
the impression I got is that most definitely that's not there, particularly with the way he answered the question regarding possibly tanking, etc., whatever. He was incredibly strong on that and virtually said that, if somebody was trying to make him to do that, he'd walk out the door. He's not interested in that. He's here to win.
Yeah,
that's paraphrasing, but that's the impression I got listening to particularly that question.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nikki. I think you're being a bit harsh, you guys, because I got the impression all the way through that Andrew had the same objective as we have, and that's to win.
Now we have Bear 2 on Skype. How you going, mate?
I'm good, mate.
Hey!
How are you?
Pretty good. Congratulations on being our first Skype caller for the year.
I'm game.
So, what can we help you with, mate?
Not very much. I just thought I'd plug it in and say good day. That's about it.
Are you just gate crashing? What was your impression of the answers that we got from the club?
I think they were good answers, and I think you did very well in the way you presented them. Congratulations on your efforts. I'm having problems here because I've got the same earphones that I'm.
You're getting loop back, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm getting feedback there. Yeah. But
that is so disturbing when it happens.
I'll just say one word. Excellent. Thank you.
No worries, mate. Thanks for coming on.
So, yeah.
And we can just point out that the comment about the question regarding the training Guernseys was actually Bear 2's question that he raised after he'd been to the open training day, and he's like, there's all these new players, I got no idea who they are.
Oh, Phoenix, was that your Uncle Bear on there, was it?
No, you're the only one with relatives on the big footy board.
Does this mean we're actually properly interactive now?
But they don't post.
We are interactive, Pete.
We are properly verbally interactive. We've taken a quantum leap.
Yeah, and might I just say that if you guys weren't wusses, we'd be visually interactive as well. But, we're, at this stage, we're only an audio podcast.
Yeah, we don't want to scare them, though, do we?
Why not? Oh, dear.
All right, guys, look, we're well over time, but I think it's quite
Can we just
quite
quickly say something?
Oh, yeah, quickly.
How awesome is to see Adelaide Crows on top of an AFL ladder, though?
Well, I was going to say, we do have a couple of other issues apart from the chat to quickly address. Pete, sorry if you're in a bit of a hurry.
No, I'm not in a hurry. I just looking at the time, that's all.
No, I've already flagged to people that we're going over time. And if people want to listen to the rest later, they can. But you're right, Nick. The women's team, what a great win that was against the Bulldogs.
It was interesting talking to my dad after the game about it, and he said his impression was the Bulldogs turned up, the players seemed like they thought they were going to win, and because they'd been talked up so much. And I kind of got that same impression as well. And then when they realised, well, hang on, we've actually got a game going on here and they're hitting us hard, they then tried to retaliate back and kept giving away all these frees, which, to be fair, their coach and one of the players who was interviewed said, no, it's our poor technique. But it was just so great to watch.
Well, I loved it. Actually, I'm a real fan of the women's footy, and I'm actually amazed at the physicality in the game. It's about 20 times more than I thought it would be, and I am a little worried that somebody's going to get hurt. But they are very, very. I like the fact they're very flexible. They change directions very quickly. They're like little bees or little ants just buzzing around, and I think that once as time goes on and as they play more and the kicking gets slightly better. I mean, there are some that have got fantastic kicking skills. Big Tex Perkins would be the classic. She can kick further than some AFL players, but it'll just get better and better. And some of them have got outstanding disposal at the moment, and some are a little bit sub in that area. But that's probably my only one critique on it at the moment.
I felt as a general observation on the Western Bulldogs game, and it was the same against GWS the previous week. Our opponents so far have become very frazzled, for want of a better word, with our intensity. We are just so hard at it and we don't let up, and other teams so far haven't been able to cope with that level of intensity or the level of our intensity for a whole quarter. I think the other teams have started quarters quite intense, and then as tiredness has kicked in, things have slowed down towards end of quarters, but we just crack in and crack in and crack in from go to woe, and other teams so far have had trouble with that, and I'm surprised that the Bulldogs had trouble with that because they do have some very good athletes, and it'll be very interesting to see what Carlton can dish up this weekend, because really I would imagine that Carlton are our only other rivals, and it's so great to see, considering, as Andrew pointed out, we weren't going to get a look into this Women's League. The AFL didn't consider we were going to be able to field a strong enough team, and to not only field a competitive team, but to field a team that the club and its supporters have embraced to such a degree, and who sit pretty comfortably on top of the ladder, albeit only 2 games in, that's got to be very satisfying for all concerned, particularly Bet Goddard.
And that's what Vardy Magic just posted in the chat, that she's an impressive human. And she very much is, but for me, I think where we've got an advantage is that she's actually also an ex-umpire. So if you look at our tackling technique, it's so much cleaner. It's even better than our AFL men's team. And I wonder how much of that is because she is an ex-umpire, so she knows this is what's going to get up, but this is how you have to tackle. You tackle any other way and it's not acceptable. And the other thing for me on her coaching, and it's really been noticeable, is that particularly watch when we play, and even when they have the ball, and other teams, the other games I've watched, they all get sucked into that ball. They all come in too close. We keep a structure. You will have one player that is tackling that one, maybe 2, and then the others will all set up around. If the ball comes out one side, we've got that covered. If it comes out the other side, we've got that covered. I think the advantage we've got is the fact that we train separately because we've got the Northern Territory team. So what they're focused on is getting the structures right, so everybody knows when they come together as a team exactly how you're going to play. And I reckon that's where our advantage actually is. Something that people thought was going to be a disadvantage, we've probably turned that into an advantage.
I thought it was actually fascinating that they do that they synchronise training sessions. And for them to have such cohesion and such solid systems, given that, a large portion of the squad doesn't even train together during the week. I mean, that's astounding, really. I mean, it's great use of modern technology, but for the girls to be able to engage in that and to take instruction and to implement game plan under those circumstances, that's incredible.
Well, I agree with you. And just on a personal basis or individual basis, again, Marinoff, she's just an absolute ripper of a player. And Chelsea Randall, Erin Phillips, Big Tex Perkins, they're just damn good players to watch.
Fane, do you think that there's any correlation with the point that you made earlier about how hard and aggressive at the ball and the body that they are, and that some of the that pressure causes the opposition to wilt? I noticed there was a lot coming out of the men's group about how they wanted to approach this season. Possibility, do you think that it's sort of like a club-wide thing that really what they want to do is focus on hitting the contests? And I know that it sounds like a trite thing, but it's just, I just recall that it was something specifically that was publicised in relation to where the men were going. It's just interesting that you picked up that little tidbit in terms of watching the girls play.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, and Nikki, you might have a better insight than me, but my understanding is that there hasn't been a lot of cross-training or interaction, certainly in football terms, between the two teams. But you'd really like it if that was a culture that was building up within the club, and it was just, almost through osmosis that it was filtering into the women's team, or perhaps, we probably don't have a really good insight at this stage into how closely Bet Goddard and Don Pike or the men's coaching staff actually work. So whether they're running individual philosophies or whether they're taking bits and pieces from the men's game, or whether there's an overriding club mantra, if you like, that we haven't perhaps been made aware of, I'm not quite sure. But I'm telling you right now, if the men's team play with that amount of intensity and that amount of physicality and discipline to maintain structure and to and to exert pressure on the ball carrier and on the contest, we're going to have a successful year.
So when they had the camp down here, which was the first time both sort of sides of our team came together, Pike did actually come in and talk with the coaches, and he actually talked about the AFL structures that he runs for our team and a lot of his thought behind it. And so they did have quite a bit of overlap there, and I'm not sure whether that's ongoing as such. I am aware that even if the men's players, it's not compulsory for them to turn up, but a lot of them have gone to the one game if they can. Otherwise, they have been following along quite keenly and watching the game as much as possible. There is no overlap because the girls kind of come in as the guys are leaving, and they're kind of doing the meditation, and I think that's what they often do towards the end of the day. So they're kind of being sort of zoned out and sent on their way, and the girls come in and they're like, oh my God, we've amped up for training. So that's kind of, they don't want that overlap much. But I know that there is the interest there. The physicality, that I think comes back to something that Goddard has said before, and she's kind of reiterated it, in that we want the other team, we want to be uncomfortable to play against, which is a terminology she uses, and I would love that to be picked up by the men's team. Just make sure the other team knows they've played us and it was not fun at all. In terms of the physicality, that was always going to be there, and I've kind of been amused by all the commentators, particularly the male commentators, who after a first quarter goes past and they're like, they're going really hard, and I didn't expect that. It's like, did you not listen to any of the women who were interviewed about why they want to play in the AFLWL? It's because they get to hit people.
Yeah,
they actually like the physicality, so that was always there. And also, if you don't have the higher skill level, that was always going to be a plus.
Hang on, Nikki, I will take you to task there. Women and the female players should not take offence to men saying we're surprised by the physicality, because it's all very good. It's all very well for a woman to say, I want to play footy because I want to hit someone. But anyone can say that.
Because they like to tackle. Because that's one of the advantages. That's where I'm saying is that they didn't listen to what these players were saying.
I think we did listen. We did listen, but there's one thing to listen to somebody saying something, and it's another thing to actually witness it, because you don't know. They might be saying, oh, yeah, we want to tackle, but you still don't know the level of tackling, the level of physicality. And I think it's a real credit to these athletes that they've been able to come in often off very little football experience. And essentially, when you're watching AFL women's football, you feel like you're watching a game of football. It's not AFL men's standard. Who gives a rat's ass? It's a quality, genuine, authentic game of AFL football. And yes, me as a male and an ex-football player, I am surprised at the level of physicality. And I am surprised at not only the physicality, but also the argy-bargy. I mean, we've seen frustration from both GWS and Western Bulldogs against us in the first 2 weeks. That element surprised me. I didn't think that there'd be such animosity between teams at certain points, and that is and it's a credit to them, and it's a compliment to the game. That we, male or female, make those comments about the game as we see it.
I think where I'm coming from here is because I played the game last year, and that's something that, even though our skills do not even come close to what you're seeing from those girls, but that's something that I've witnessed playing the game. So that's kind of why it wasn't a surprise to me, and it was something that I was expecting.
Yeah, and it's great now that it's on the
Ding,
national
ding.
stage.
I'm going to pull you guys apart there, and we're going to wrap that up. It's now well over time. And I'm just going to, because I can, I'm just going to have the last word and say what I really like is the singing of the song, because sometimes I think you look at the men and just sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it does just look like they're going through the motions. I can certainly say that when the girls sing that song, they are not going through the motions. It is a very exciting thing to see, and I do enjoy that. So that is, I've got the last word, so there you go. All right, thanks very much, everyone, for listening. It's been a really good episode tonight. We hope that you have enjoyed the interaction. I hope that you enjoyed the interview that we brought you, and hope you're satisfied with all of the questions that were asked and answered by the club. Nikki, Macca and Phoenix, thanks so much for going down there and doing that on behalf of all of us, so that we can get some further insights into the club and how it's run.
Very good, Pete. And no JLT for us coming up, so let's keep following the women for now.
Yep, get down to Thurby on Sunday.
I think so, and I'm not going to say any more save rounds because I think we've spent them as many as we can. So we'll look forward to catching up with everybody on Tuesday Night Live next Tuesday. And in the meantime, enjoy the women and all of the great stuff that they've got to offer. And before you know it, the season proper will be on us. All right, thanks very much, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, all.
See ya.
See you later.